Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's special committee of the whole meeting. The special committee of the whole meeting is called to order. Kindly recognize all the alderpersons are present, save for Alderperson Kosarog, who is assisting his Western Avenue Elementary School in their annual golf outing fundraiser. So it's probably best he's not here. So they had a perfect day for golf. Item 2 is to approve special committee of the whole minutes from April the 14th, 2025. Motion by Mayor, seconded by Paschke. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. You good? 9 affirmative, 0 negative, and 1 council member absent. We jump to items of business, folks. Item 3A is to enjoy a presentation on potential solar installations on City of Geneva property and related costs. We have our distinguished guest, the superintendent of the Electric Works, Mr. Aaron Holton. Aaron asks that we withhold all questions until the end of the presentation.
Yeah, we'll start there and see where it goes.
Excellent. And we're going to turn off one of these lights here. I think Stephanie might be coming in. Let's see if we try the first time. No.
It's a puzzle. There we go.
Oh.
Okay. Good evening, City Council and Mayor.
Good evening.
Per the agenda item, we're here to discuss potential solar locations and possible costs for the City of Geneva. So we will just jump right into this. So this all started coming out of the strategic planning session in the City Council's strategic planning session in 2023. We were asked to find any sites that would be suitable for solar within the City of Geneva on land that the City of Geneva owned, which is a good question to ask. But then we as staff also asked, what's the inevitable next question? And that's going to be, how much can we put there? How much is it going to cost? So to answer those questions, we put out an RFP for engineering services and consulting services. Chose Interface Engineering as the successful firm. Interface, their principals were here when we awarded the contract. They both have, or their principals all have extensive background in the utility space and have worked with municipalities before. One of their consultants that they use is, I'm drawing a blank on his name now. I'll get to it. Anyways, they have a plethora of consultants they work with also that have done this sort of thing in the past. So the scope of the study was to identify suitable sites for renewables in Geneva, obviously, estimate costs, and then outline a path forward for Geneva. So we have a reference as we move into this project. So as part of that study, we identified 7 potential locations for solar, and we'll go through those here in just a moment. So criteria included locations of substations and system hosting capability. I don't know if some of you might remember, several years ago we did a system hosting capability study, and that told us how much solar we could have on the system before we incurred other costs. And also we were going to the evaluation produced estimated system size and outputs for each location. And then we use that to model potential savings for a model year. Okay. Here's what everybody's here for. Start with the biggest and maybe not the best, but we have Prairie Green out on the west end of town. I will say anecdotally, anytime a solar company calls to talk about solar in Geneva, they point out to this section of land right here. So we thought we'd start there. I think there's roughly 360 acres of Prairie Green. 300 acres would support about 50 megawatts of utility scale solar. That is a lot of solar, to be honest with you. I will put the caveat here at the very beginning. The cost that we discuss a little bit later on, those are exclusive of any sort of system improvements we would have to do to take the output of these solar locations. For instance, if we had a 50 megawatt utility scale solar generator, that would necessitate probably its own substation. We would not be able to feed that kind of into our existing infrastructure. So that would be an added cost on top of this. 50 megawatts of solar gives us about 80,000 megawatt hours of generation. To put that into perspective, the city of Geneva uses about 360,000 megawatt hours of energy a year. So that would be about 22% or so. Solar alone would not really, it would help, but it wouldn't be as advantageous if you would think that we had 50 megawatts of solar out there when it comes to capacity savings. So that has to do with the fact that the PJM system peaks later in the day or even early evening, and by that time, the solar efficiency is down because of the angle of the sun. So we said, well, maybe 300 acres is a bit much. What else could we put out there? 10 megawatts is what we settled on. Now, the 10 megawatts is within the system hosting study. We would still have to do some system improvements, but not nearly as extensive for 300. 10 megawatts gives us about 16,000 megawatt hours of energy, so a little bit more reasonable. And the 10 megawatts would land on about 60 acres versus 300. One last item before I move on from Prairie Green. I believe there were bond covenants that this was open space, is that correct?
Passive recreation.
Okay, passive recreation. So that would have to be considered too before we cover the whole place with solar panels. Okay, so that was one. Like I said, we had 7, so the remaining 6 are all more what I would call traditional residential or commercial type installations at various locations around town. The first one is fire station number 1. This would be a rooftop solar similar to go on a house or many businesses here in the city. Estimate about 80 kW would go on the roof there. That would give us about 14,000 kilowatt hours production in July, and surprisingly, that goes down to about 5,300 production in December, and that all has to do with the angle of the sun and the length of the days. We didn't go out, we didn't look at the buildings, we didn't do any structural analysis. It was just this rooftop could take about 80 megawatts. So there would be more work to do if we decided to put solar on any of these structures. Next location is the parking garage. This one's kind of neat. We could put a solar canopy on the top floor of this parking garage. Everybody would have covered parking at that point. I got a thumbs up from the Assistant Public Works Director today when I showed him this. He said that means we wouldn't have to plow snow up there. He's all for it. The size of this system, or the size of the area that we have, we get about 745 kW AC, which is a pretty good chunk of solar generation right in town. Again, 155 kilowatt hours in July, 38,000 in December. The advantage of the parking garage is there's very little native load. So unlike the fire department or some of the other facilities we look at later on, all you're really powering here is some lights, the elevator, and the fire control system. So a lot of that energy would flow right back out onto the system. I'm going to move across the river here to the wastewater treatment facility. This has been looked at in the past, so we included it this time. There's several good locations here. The big white building is the solids handling building. That would be a good place to put rooftop solar, and also the green space there to the south of the plant. We get about 700 kW here, so similar to what we get over at the parking garage. Similar energy production both in the summer and the winter. It should be noted that the solar installation on the green space would be fixed solar, similar to what's out at Kane County Animal Control, if anybody's familiar with that. They have a fixed ground-mounted solar panels out there. Moving out to GGF. GGF's a very nice spot for solar. We have a lot of open space out there, as well as we can tie directly into the substations behind GGF. So that means that all the energy that would be produced by this facility would tie right back into the substation bus and go back out on the system. So this is kind of a hybrid between a industrial and a utility scale because it ties directly to the utility system. So we have enough room out there for a little over a megawatt. And again, the corresponding increase in production, so 217 kW in July, about 80,000 in December. And if I'm going too fast, anybody wants to write anything down, let me know. We can go back as well. Public Works, again, another large facility in the city. This would be all rooftop solar out here. We didn't anticipate any covered of any storage yards or anything. 890 kW again, AC capacity. And you can also see the corresponding outputs. Again, this system would likely tie into the main panels at the facility, so whatever the facility is using while the panels are producing would take that first, and then the rest would get pushed out on the system. And last but certainly not least, fire station number 2, a little bit smaller building. Again, this is be more like a residential rooftop type solar installation. Get 66 kWs there for about 11.5 kilowatt hours production in July, and about 4,600 kilowatt hours production in December. So those are the 7 sites that we chose. Before I kind of move on here, anybody have any questions? Be a good place to break.
Any questions at all for Alderperson Mayor?
How many acres are at GGF?
It's a good question. Let me back up.
It wasn't on the slide.
Well, it wasn't on the slide. I believe there's 10 acres.
10 acres, okay, thank you.
And for everyone tuning in at home, this slide presentation will be available on our website. We may make some amendments to include acreage, what have you, but it'll be up in a couple days.
And I think that's 10 acres for the entire site. We still have to take the generator and the substations out of that, so. Sure.
Your microphone, Alderperson?
Sorry, can you please go back to the GGF slide?
Good? All right.
Alderperson Bowring.
It's fine if you want to take this later, but can we make sure we address the difference between industrial versus utility usage? If you could just lay that out for me.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to be now if it will
Okay,
make more
yeah,
sense later.
we'll talk about it at the
Thank
end.
you.
All right. Okay, so that was the first part of the project. Second part of the project was how much would this potentially cost? This isn't in the slide deck. The 50 megawatt solar generator at Prairie Green would be around $60 million, give or take. 60.
Did you say 60 million?
I said 60. So for projected costs for the 10 megawatt utility scale at Prairie Green, $11,750,000. Cost for the rooftop, about $9.7 million. And again, as I said at the beginning, these costs are exclusive of any system upgrades that would have to be added. To break that down a little bit in more detail, the canopy solar at the parking garage is estimated to be about $4.2 million. GGF solar about $2.9. Now the projected savings. So we want to do this not only to be environmentally friendly, but also to be advantageous to our utility. Those systems, that 10 megawatts and the rooftop locations, would give us about 21,000 megawatt hours of market purchases, would save us about 21,000, almost 22,000 megawatt hours of market purchases for energy. To put that in perspective, that's about 6% of our yearly energy usage. That's also about what we used to get off of the Settlers Hill landfill generator when it was still running at full production. The gas production's fallen off, they've fallen down a little bit, but we used to get that same percentage out there. So along with that saving buying off the market, we'd save about $600,000 in energy costs, avoided costs from not buying off of PJM. Again, the capacity savings are smaller, has to do with solar peak production and when it occurs versus when the PJM peak during the day occurs. So. We also looked at battery energy storage, or BES. The BES part would get us the capacity savings that we kind of miss out on just having solar. So we looked at two different scenarios for batteries. One was, this is a total of 26 megawatt hours of batteries co-located with all the solar installations, however that might look, whether it's a Connex with batteries or a power wall, what have you, whatever we could fit at those various locations. The advantage of the battery is we can charge it up and then we can discharge it over time, so we can use it as capacity. So we can use it for peak shaving, much like we use GGF. Based on how we would have to operate it throughout the day for that peak shaving, we'd get about $720,000 in capacity savings per year. So with capacity prices such as they are right now, GGF saved us about $3.3 million, so that would put us up to about $4 million a year savings on capacity charges with PJM. At an installed cost of $8.9 million. The second scenario we looked at was a very large 150 megawatt hour large capacity battery. This was originally envisioned to go along with the 50 megawatts out at Prairie Green, and we said, well, I don't know, well, I said, I don't know if we would want to do that much solar at Prairie Green. Could we put that elsewhere in the city? And they said, yes. Most likely we would co-locate those at the substations so we could tie directly to the buses. This would probably be a situation where we would charge the battery overnight and then we would discharge it during the day. Price tag on this is about $48 million, almost 49. But we do save another 1.9 million on capacity. So there is some advantages there. But there is a longer payback on those larger batteries. Okay, so we kind of laid the groundwork there, where we want to do it, how much it's going to cost. So how do we move forward? What does Geneva do to green our portfolio, bring more solar on, more renewables? The goal of the City Council for a long time has been we want to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and increase the percentage of renewables. So we have a couple options. We can purchase RECs, renewable energy credits, to offset greenhouse gas emissions. We can develop our own solar, which we just went through. So the 10 megawatt utility rooftops options, about 23.7 million. Or we can look at purchase power contracts or agreements. So we have a couple of those in place right now. That's pretty much how we get most of our energy these days. We have the NIPA contract. We also have an Xterra contract, and we have a contract with WMRE for the landfill gas. And there's advantages and disadvantages to each one of those, and we will step through those. So renewable energy credits. I know some people in here are probably familiar, others are not, people listening at home. So what is a renewable energy credit, or a REC? You'll hear RECs talked about a lot when you talk about solar, wind, renewables in pretty much any iteration. At least in Illinois, the RECs are administered by the Illinois Power Agency. So the IPA is responsible for procuring all the power for Ameren and ComEd. They also run the REC program. So in Illinois, they're called SRECs, solar RECs. Again, they're purchased by the IPA, Illinois Power Agency, for ComEd and Ameren. RECs are a financial tool to encourage energy developers to build solar. In a traditional generation, thermal generation, if you will, there's capacity charges, right? So the capacity charges we pay to PJM go to pay the base load generation to be built, connected, and be available, right? So that's where your generators make their money, is off capacity prices. Solar and wind renewables are not considered a capacity product because they're intermittent. They can't always be there. So a renewable energy credit serves as an incentive for developers to build solar. And it's based on the output of the solar panel. One REC is equal to 1 megawatt hour of production. And the reason why the Illinois Power Agency buys RECs is because the entity that owns the REC can claim that as part of their renewable portfolio standard. Now, the city of Geneva does not have a renewable portfolio standard or an RPS, so we don't really necessarily have to worry about that. But ComEd, Ameren, and the IPA do. So they buy all of these SRECs. So the renewable portfolio standard for the IPA, I believe, is 40% by 2030. I believe they're running behind that right now. But just for reference, a REC is worth about 30 megawatt hours, $30 a megawatt hour within the state of Illinois if we were to go to the IPA and buy, or if we would buy RECs in lieu of somebody selling to the IPA, we would have to give them at least $30 a megawatt hour to do that. And if we wanted to offset all of the energy that we produce or that we use within the city of Geneva, it would cost us about $12 million a year. For reference, I believe this year we budgeted about $28 million for purchase power. So that would be about another 30% on top of that if we wanted to do that. The advantage of that, if you own the REC, you can claim to be using the renewable energy. Okay. And so even though we can't claim it because we don't have the RECs, between the NextEra contract and the landfill generator, Settlers Hill, Geneva sources about 25% of our energy from renewable sources every year. But again, that wouldn't go towards any sort of renewable portfolio standards because we don't own those RECs. But if you look at how our power is generated, about 25% comes from renewable energy. So we're doing not bad. Look at Geneva-owned solar. Again, we're just going to repeat some of these numbers. The other thing that RECs do, besides incentivizing solar generators to build solar generation, it also offsets the cost of that solar generation for people that allow solar to be built on their property, buildings, land, whatever. Anybody that gets solar within the city of Geneva, all of your contractors are going to give you that benefit up front because that was part of CEJA. Geneva would not be interested in selling those RECs, primarily because while we don't have a renewable portfolio standard now, there's always the possibility we would have to have one in the future. And we would not want to give up those RECs. We'd want to keep them so that way we can make that claim legitimately that we're using that energy. This could all be done in stages. Rooftops, then ground mount, then utility scale. We could start out with utility scale first. That could all be kind of hashed out as we move forward. I will say that at the moment and projected into the kind of near future, we don't need any more energy. The contracts we have now are covering our energy needs quite well. So we don't want to go overboard and end up in a situation where we have more energy than what we can use and we have to sell it at a loss on the market. We have to navigate that path. As far as battery storage, again, just rehashing the numbers, it had about 2.4 million for the rooftop, about 6.5 million at the 10 megawatt utility scale, and 48 million for a large location. Again, this doesn't have to be added all at once. We can add it in the future. We can add it piecemeal. as the case may be. There are also purchase power agreement options for batteries as well. So we could sign a contract with a company that supplies batteries and these large battery units and work out an agreement there. And again, the behind-the-meter battery storage would help us on capacity prices or capacity charges, whereas the solar doesn't necessarily, or at least not as much. So then finally, we got purchase power agreements and contracts. So it'd be very similar to our current PPAs. We could tailor it to load and energy curves. The companies that provide these type of contracts could be very accommodating to our needs, obviously, for the exchange of price. This would be the simple way of going about this, right? So it just ends up being $1 per megawatt hour bill to the city, almost exactly like what we pay for our power now. We don't have any capital costs, we don't have any maintenance costs, we don't have any replacement costs, we don't have any labor costs. It's just once a month we get an invoice and we pay it. Downside is we do not get any capacity savings because we're not behind the meter, right? So as capacity prices become more volatile, we kind of lose that insulation if we don't have anything within the city. There's a third option besides, kind of plays on that point I just made. We could do a purchase power agreement for utility scale solar within the city. So in that case, we would put out an RFP or an RFQ for solar vendors. We'd stake out where we want that to go. We'd go through basically the bidding process and then negotiate our contract from there. Contract terms can be medium or long-term. Typically, anybody who's putting in a solar generator is going to want 10 to 20 years just because of the cost. We have looked at this in the past. One of the options then, I don't know if there's still an option now or not, was developer would come in, build the solar field. We'd provide the interconnection, and then after 5 years, we would be able to purchase the generator. 5 years is key because that's when they get all of their renewable energy credits from the state. So there's that trade-off again. So that is my last slide. I'm sure there's plenty of questions.
The floor is
Happy to
open to
answer.
questions for our superintendent.
Alderperson Bowering, you had a question about the difference between industrial and utility. There's probably a formal, if you look online, there is probably a formal definition between what's one and what's the other. The way I've used this process, or I've used it here, is an industrial would be one that ties in essentially to the panel and service of the facility where the solar is located.
So like, okay, so if it was located at GGF, then it would tie into
It would-
GGF and, or, sorry,
Well,
yeah, take me
so-
through that.
So, like I said, GGF's kind of a hybrid, right?
Okay,
GGF, we would tie it into the substation.
substation, okay,
So it would be more like a utility.
okay.
It just wouldn't be as large. It wouldn't be 10, 20.
But if it was at
50
Public
megawatts.
Works, then it would be industrial?
Industrial.
Because it would power everything at Public
Right.
Works that was happening while
Right.
solar was being generated,
Right.
assuming there was no battery? Okay.
Yes. So
Got it,
that,
okay.
that's the distinction I made there.
Okay. And all of, well, so, like Prairie Green, would that be close enough to power anything
Well, it would be,
industrially? Like
Well,
water
it's-
treatment, like the
it's-
water plant, or, I don't know?
so it would, physically, the power would flow from Prairie Green to either the Kessling or Delnor substation. Whatever load that it didn't feed at those two substations, it would go back onto ComEd's
Okay.
grid, okay? Where we would get the advantage is it becomes an accounting exercise then, and we would say all that generation's behind the meter, so we would get applied to our other, it would get applied to the other sections of the city, kind of mathematically, not physically.
The part
If that makes
going to ComEd or the part
Right.
going to our substations?
It would, the part going to ComEd.
Okay,
So there's metering at the substations.
Okay.
GGF's a fantastic example because we have the generator there. We have
Right.
GVP, or GGF at GVP, sorry. And if I confuse you on three-letter acronyms, I'm sorry. Please raise your hand and I will explain. There's metering there. It's metering that meters in both directions.
okay,
So we get credit for the energy that flows out on the ComEd system. Just like we have to pay, or we get charged for the energy that comes off of ComEd system.
so in some ways it would, depending on how much fed into ComEd, that would wind up, so it wouldn't reduce capacity charges, but it would in some ways do some of what
It would
a
reduce,
battery
it would
would do.
reduce our energy charges.
Our energy charges,
Right.
but
So
not
there's-
to the, okay.
So there's-
But
there's-
that wouldn't that would not be as much cost savings as if we were able to reduce our capacity charges, because that's
Right.
really where, yeah, the big
Yes.
numbers. Okay,
Yes.
great, thank
Yeah,
you.
energy charges are still low. They've returned kind of their normal. We had pre-COVID, COVID, and everything's kind of gone back down to the way it was before. So energy prices are still relatively quote-unquote affordable compared to the capacity prices right now, so.
Okay. For the purchase power agreement, could you explain a little bit more? So, sorry, so we would put out an RFP for someone to come in. This would be kind of like, here's the site, someone come and build a solar array of whichever type it was for that site. And then they would control it for some period of time. But I feel like, so you said 5 years might be the end, at 5 years, they get the credits. But so would that be the end of the term, or, because I think you also mentioned 10 or 20 years?
Yeah, we would have to negotiate that out in the
Okay.
contract.
So at the,
It could just be, we're gonna just take the energy off the solar generator. You can keep all the RECs and all that. We just want the energy. It could be, no, we want the RECs as well as the energy, so we would have to, they would just have to be hashed out in the contract agreement.
and when you're saying we, you mean the city
I
of
mean the
Geneva,
city of
not
Geneva.
not the person
Right.
applying for the RFP?
Right.
Okay. So then, does it seem like, and maybe I will get there if I look at these numbers for a minute, does it seem like there's some sort of sweet spot where there could be some amount of solar and some amount of battery installed to kind of get the ball rolling and start bringing down some of the capacity? Because it seems like behind the meter is really key for this being useful, since the peak is too late for the solar to actually impact that.
That's an excellent question.
Okay.
And we didn't get that deep into it.
Okay,
We could certainly look at that, and, is there a balancing point, kind of a trade-off between costs and where we get the most, kind of bang for our buck.
right. Okay, yeah, well, I'd be curious to see that. I
Sure.
will study these numbers a little bit more while
Okay.
other people give you questions. Thanks.
Anyone else? Alderperson Mayor, then Alderperson Palmquist.
So, at GGF, which to me seems like the number one good site for this, based on everything that's available close by, with a substation
Sure.
close by, and also that we generate power there as well. That with a battery seems like a really nice way to start this process to me, because I don't think that we're gonna take a leap into doing all of it at once, but it does seem like we could invest wisely here and gain some further intelligence on the matter by doing so. So to me, taking a step forward, it would be nice to know how that looks, because I would be very hesitant to go into one of these agreements with a 5-year plan necessarily, because then you're left with the maintenance side, which is we don't really know what the maintenance looks like
Right.
on these, do we? I mean,
No, we
Does
don't,
the
we don't have any,
consultant have-
we don't have any experience with that. And we
Right.
did not, as part of this study, we did not look at, ongoing
costs
costs.
to maintain the
Right.
solar field and
Right.
what the depreciation or
Right.
the wear and tear is,
Right, because the entry price, well, the price is just the entry price, right?
right.
We would have to maintain it, we'd also have to plan for eventually panel replacement, so there's, even on a solar facility, there's ongoing capital costs. And
So in
we would have to
your,
consider.
in the savings lines that you've estimated within here,
Right.
does that have an operating cost that goes with,
that
that
was-
travels with
that
it,
was-
that reduces the value as
That
well?
was strictly looking at it from the market.
From a first investment, return on investment kind of?
Right.
Okay. Where are we at in the consultant's process? Are we finished with the consultant, or is there more deliverables from them?
No, we're pretty much done.
We're wrapped up with
Yeah.
them? Okay. What did you say the overall usage was in megawatt hours for Geneva in a year?
360,000 megawatt hours.
Right. That's a nice number. Okay. And what did can we go back to GGF slide? Sorry.
That's a good question.
Sure. Got to get back to it, it's about halfway into the. Okay,
Yeah, you gotta pop the text down.
You want the data as well?
So, do you have the cost side of this particular slide? You didn't do it by
2.9 million.
2.9
Yeah,
million for
2.9.
GGF? And the battery?
the battery, we didn't break the batteries out by location, it was just,
A per,
it would be a 26 megawatt hour battery.
That was
Okay.
3.9.
I'm sure I could ask that question though, about how large of a
I
battery.
think we could probably just apportion it, right? Anyway, that's the one that I would be interested in seeing on a standalone basis to evaluate whether or not how much energy in total does Geneva use on an annual basis? Like, what percentage of the usage would just, well, I think I'm asking you to
No,
recalculate
I
everything just for GGF.
I know exactly
though.
I know exactly what you're asking. I can get that number for you.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for now.
Okay.
Let other people ask.
Alderperson Palmquist?
Maybe you addressed this and I missed it. Financing the initial infrastructure, what mechanisms would be used in the scenarios where we would install and control? And kind of part of that question, is there a threshold that then changes that might inform us as to the initial scale or investment?
So, again, in this study, we didn't look at that aspect of, it was just, this is how much it costs. For, the 2.2 or 2.8 million dollars, we would likely bond for that, I would imagine. And so we would have to look at that, look at our, we'd have to run some scenarios of our current bond rates, what it would do to rates, so on and so forth.
I guess I was hinting at that. Is there a
Yeah.
bond threshold then that we could
Right.
kind of be below as we piece together a
Okay.
combination?
I would have
Alderperson
to look into that, yeah.
Kilberg, is it? The Malachi?
Go ahead.
Kilberg
just-
and Malachi, yep.
A couple of questions. Obviously, the landfill's about played out. We probably have less than, 5 years left there, maybe 5 to 10 years. And
I'd probably say 10 years,
pardon me?
probably 10.
Yeah, so, and that currently constitutes, about 3 to 5% of our generation?
Yeah,
So, this would be a replacement that would parallel what we were using from the
Right, what we were
landfill
doing.
previously.
Yes.
And then I guess my question is, what is the life expectancy of this type of a development? 25 years? 30
I
years?
would
What are
think-
they saying?
Solar panels, 20 to 25 years. There's some debate out there in the solar industry on, do you have to repower a solar field after 20 years, or you can keep going? Essentially, what happens is the panels just put out less and less power. But I think after 20 years, they're down to 80%. So you'd have to make the decision whether you wanted to spend the money at that point, or just, take what the system's putting out.
Do you know, is the county's solar field south of the jail there, is that sufficient to supply the judicial center's needs and the jail center's needs?
I will be honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about that.
Dean, it is not. It provides a fairly good percentage, but not 100%
Yeah,
at all.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
From their dedication out there, I
Yeah.
thought they were making something similar to that type of a
Right.
claim. Yeah, so that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
Alderperson Malicki.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Aaron, Director. I got some questions. I just wanted to quickly go down. Starting with Prairie Green, the location at Prairie Green, was that just like a general location for Prairie Green, or was it targeted for certain areas?
It was just a general location.
Just general location.
The large array, the 50 megawatts, that was essentially all of Prairie Green.
Okay,
The 10 megawatts, which would be on about 60 acres, we didn't pick a site out for it
gotcha.
because it's pretty much 6 to 1, half a dozen the other where it goes. It would be probably close to Peck Road because we have facilities right across the road rather than have to bring all the way from the far western
Oh, I
edge.
see, sure,
So,
sure. And Stephanie, really quick, when we signed the lease for the farmland out there, what does the city get contracted per year for the lease?
Oh, I don't,
You don't have to.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
75 a year?
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
much. But then we also have still some wetland credits
Sure,
that are still being developed in order to sell
okay,
out there too. So you likely would not want to do anything on that property until those were all, and then you probably can't once you've sold the credits. So that would be another consideration.
yeah. All the numbers that you gave earlier, savings versus costs, are those all spring 2024 numbers?
winter, yes, it'd be spring 2024.
Okay, so it'd probably be helpful to see where things are at today, I would think, especially with the stuff that's coming down the pipeline with PJM.
With the capacity prices.
Yeah, to see what kind of, pros and
Right.
cons doing something like this versus
And we can
remaining.
update those relatively.
Okay, yeah,
quickly.
that'd be great to see. The renewable portfolio standard, is there something in particular that would trigger us entering into that? Or is that more of like something that we would opt into?
The state of Illinois would have to give us they would have to say the municipalities have to meet a renewable portfolio standard. There would have to be a state statute.
Oh, okay.
That
Are
would,
there
that
certain,
would be the trigger
are
where
there
we would
like-
have to.
do we have neighboring communities that are engaged in that now, or
I
no?
don't think so, no.
Yeah,
I know there's the, IMEA has the solar generator in St. Charles, I don't know about Naperville.
okay. Boy, I gotta really do better with my writing. That wastewater treatment, that site, any concerns with it being like right adjacent to the river and like a floodplain or anything like that, or
We didn't look at
taller,
that.
taller caissons or?
Right. It would be,
you know,
if we
columns?
decided, if we did decide to build a facility there, that would be something we would take into consideration.
Gotcha. And then my last question with the battery storage, where it was like the citywide battery storage option.
The large one?
I think that's the one it was, where it was like multiple locations scattered throughout the
Yes.
city. I assume that's all placed on city property then.
Yep. Yeah, when we were kicking that idea around, it was pretty much decided it would be, we would put them at the substation locations.
Oh, okay.
So that way we
Gotcha.
have a good interconnection area right there. We own all that property,
I see.
so on and so
I was
forth.
just trying to visualize what, multiple battery locations
Right.
looks like.
These
around-
gigantic connexes scattered around town.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Alderperson Paskey.
Thank you for this information. This was a lot to digest. I think we'll be looking at it for a while. Can you tell us where the roof life expectancy is considered when looking at Fire Station 1, Public Works, and Fire Station 2? Because I know they won't install solar if you don't have at least 20 years left in the
Yeah.
life
Well,
of the
Fire
roof.
Station 1, we just put a new roof
We
on
did,
this
okay.
year.
Good.
Fire Station number 2, old.
Right.
Public
Public
Works, we
Works.
just did a whole, not a new roof, but
Rejuvenation.
a rejuvenation that's
Of it.
supposed to give us another 10 to 20 years, I think, if not longer.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we didn't. We just, this would be a good building for solar, this would be a good building for solar. If we decided to move forward with those locations, we would have to take that into consideration.
I was just thinking it could be an added cost that may
Yeah.
not have been, I think the parking garage and the GGF locations look to be the most ideal. All things considered, I agree with Alderperson Mayor that GGF sounds like the top possibility, and it would be great to be able to see what it would look like to start there.
Okay?
Thank you.
Alderperson Kilburg.
I just one other question. I know that we're looking at site options, and I guess my question would be Prairie Green, and to place a large solar field at Prairie Green, would that be contradictory to what the voters supported in the late 90s when that referendum passed, and would this be some type of a potential legal challenge if in fact we tried to site it there? I guess I'm not that excited about it, but I'm just saying, is this one that could be easily eliminated because of potential legal ramifications?
I would think that would be a discussion that the city
Yeah,
council
so
would have to have and
I
decide.
don't know about the legal ramifications. What I do know is that about 10 years ago or 12 years ago, obviously, different people sitting at the dais, that was the discussion, and that's why we did not move forward at that time with any solar on Prairie Green. Not because of the legal, but because of the way the bonds were sold and the language and what the expectation was by the general public.
And it was a significantly smaller array. I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 acres. Yeah. Yeah, really small.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Alderperson Bowery.
Could you bring back the slide with the projected costs? I did not get that parking garage cost written down, and I just,
Oh, yes.
8.9 million
oh, thank you.
per month.
Hang on just a second. I will get back to it. The parking garage was 4.2.
Oh, shucks.
Oh,
You were close.
What was 8.9?
I don't know, I have 9.7 for the,
Off by, that's for all of the rooftops.
that's
That's
all
for
of,
all of them. yeah.
okay. So do you have a breakdown for each of the different,
Not in
Rooftops?
the slide deck, but I can provide one.
okay. Yeah, I'd be interested to see that. I tend to agree with Alderperson Mayor, and you even said it, that GGF seems like a very nice spot, and it certainly is like outside of Prairie Green seems to be the greatest potential capacity. And then again, I think that probably the thing that seems most appealing and useful is to pair something with battery storage so that we would realize those capacity savings, if possible.
Okay?
But, okay, so can you tell us the numbers for the individual ones? Or would it be better to come back to that? And also, thank you, this was great. I know we've all been waiting for this for a while, and I'm excited to have so much to think about.
Yeah, so I'll give you these numbers here. I'll
Okay.
also send it out.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure it gets posted. So, for fire station number one, it's $256,000. 4.2 for the canopy above the parking. Wastewater is 1.9 million. And I'm giving you round numbers too, so
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
add them all up, they might not.
Sure.
GGF is 2.9. Public Works is 2.4. And then fire station number two is 206.
All right, well, that one does not seem like a good bet to me, given the many problems with that
Yes.
facility. Okay, thank you.
Superintendent, if I may interrupt, and if the council would indulge me, is it fair to say that this body would be interested in precluding Prairie Green moving forward? Does anyone think we should keep Prairie Green in the mix? Scratch Prairie Green off
Scratch
of
Prairie Green.
any consideration. Yeah.
So noted.
Anyone else? Alderperson Marks.
I like the GGF facility. I'd really like to see what the costs are and what the savings are gonna be.
Okay.
And if it's, what I don't wanna do is push our rates higher than our surrounding communities either. And that's gonna be where the balancing act comes into this, I would imagine, because, you know, that hurts businesses and homeowners also. So if we're gonna dig into any project, I would say that GGF would be my preference, to go down and see down to the nitty-gritty of what it's gonna do for everything.
Okay.
On who wishes to speak? Alderperson Maliki, then Mayor.
Is there any opportunity for us to do any sort of utilities solar elsewhere in the state? Sort of buy into a, you know,
That's where
solar
the,
field somewhere else,
that's
you know,
where,
down south, and we have a coal plant down south, so.
yes, so that's where the purchase power agreement would come from,
Okay,
where we said, the way we would structure that request would be, we want to buy 50,000 megawatt hours of renewable energy, you know, give us your offers.
okay.
And
And I'm
so-
just
and so-
thinking long-term even, you know, like if GGF comes together and all of a sudden it's fantastic opportunity and it works for the city, you know, 5 years down the road, if there's somewhere else that we need to start looking depending on the markets and
Yeah,
all sorts of
and
stuff.
I think it's going to be, we'll have to consider everything when the time comes. There's just not enough physical landmass within the city of Geneva for us to supply all of our energy needs
Sure.
internally from renewables. We're going to have to look externally.
Okay,
So that'll be part of the discussion as well.
thank you.
Alderperson Mayor.
So, it worries me putting solar onto some of our existing buildings that weren't designed for solar as a starting point. And I wonder if you could look at the cost to install solar as we move forward, and if there's any structural impacts that we would design in to include solar as an option for roofs as we build in the future.
Okay, yeah, that would,
And I was going to add, I probably shouldn't, but if we were to do a covered market structure downtown, whether or not that can, something like they have in Wheaton, would support solar. And
you're talking about like where the French market's at?
yeah, right,
Okay.
exactly. That's city land, so
Right,
that would be interesting to me.
okay.
Thank you.
And that also keeps the vegetables nice and cool. Anyone else? There's no action tonight, other than the action we took by concurrence to remove Prairie Green from future consideration. There's no action on the presentation per se. You'll clean that up,
Yes.
deliver that to Pete, we'll have that put on the website. Alderperson Reineke.
Yeah, I just wanted to unpack some of the unstated costs, and I realize they're not in what you've been thinking about today, but, you know, the cost of dismantling an old system after 20 years or 25 years, you know, the ongoing labor costs and maintenance costs, those could be substantial over 20 years. So having a sense of what those are would be helpful. I also wondered whether there was either from the state or the federal level, any incentives or funding or any opportunities on the upfront on the installation. Your thoughts on that? I suspect not, but just wondering if they've been investigated.
Yeah, like I said, we didn't consider, the scope of this was just, you know, what could we put where and how much it would cost. You're not incorrect. There are ongoing costs if we own something. As far as incentives, the environment for incentives is a little shaky right now. We'll just probably have to take a wait and see on that.
Alderperson Kilburg.
What do you see as the direction that you've been given this evening as we move forward here? It seems like there's a focus on the GGF
Right.
site. And
Yeah,
what do you think
we'll go
would be the logical next step, you think?
So we'll go back, or I will go back. We'll look at kind of all the options at GGF to put solar out there, because that seems like that was the best consensus of where to do that. We'll consider, you know, Geneva-owned purchase power agreements, kind of look at all the options, and then we'll give you guys something to think about.
Alderperson Bowery.
Sorry, I have one more question. So, the main, sorry, okay, so I'll start over. So with a purchase power agreement, basically what we're doing is, just purchasing credits essentially to like offset the power that we're already getting from other sources. Like, because you said we don't need more power at this point. So how would that work? Like, would we actually get more power, or we would be essentially getting something a little bit like the SREC? Or would we actually be purchasing more power?
Most likely, we would be purchasing more power. The bigger question is whether or not we purchase the renewable energy credits along with that additional power that we are getting.
Okay, so I guess I don't understand why that would make any sense for us, because we already have existing contracts that my understanding is we can't really get out of. Maybe some of them, so Settlers Hill will, you know, eventually keep
Right.
diminishing and that will go away, but our contract and ownership of the coal plant is not going away anytime soon, as far as we know, and I don't remember the time period for the NextEra contracts.
Next
5
year
years?
is through 2032.
2032, okay.
So
So
another 7
essentially, we would just be buying extra power that we would then, and then we would sell back some of our capacity, or sell back some of our power probably at a loss? Or like, can you just take me through that scenario?
Right, so without knowing the actual numbers.
Sure. Wild speculation.
Wild speculation. Yes, if we ended up generating more electricity than what we can use in our system, we would have to sell that in the market, likely at a loss, because all we're going to get at the market is the spot rate, or the spot prices,
Okay.
which average about 2.9 cents a kilowatt hour, about $29 a megawatt hour. I don't know what a purchase power agreement contract power price would be. It wouldn't surprise me if it was in the $60 or $70 range, so about 6 or 7 cents a kilowatt hour. So we would have that loss. What would be ideal, because we're not gonna be able to do this instantly, right? We can't.
Sure.
We just couldn't make solar appear out there. Realistically, we're looking at a good 2, probably 3 years before we would have anything built out there and ready to go. My hope is, all the construction that's going on and all the building that's going on the east side of town raises our energy needs to where we
Huh.
do need that extra energy. And so
During
that
the
would
day.
give us an option instead of just going out on the market and buying it, or, signing another contract with Nextera or doing something like that, where we would have this option for energy, so.
You're talking about a purchase power?
Yeah,
or-
in a purchase power agreement.
In a purchase power agreement?
Right. Or if we owned it, for that matter. too.
Okay. A purchase power agreement would take several years to negotiate, or you're saying building a solar
I think
array?
building it and
Okay.
making it operational and having it actually produce electrons would be
Fair enough.
a couple of years.
Yeah, okay, nope, I understand. I guess, for me at least, purchase power agreement seems interesting only at the point at which we are fairly certain that we actually need more power. I don't think there's a lot of financial efficiency gained from purchasing green energy when we don't really need it. That doesn't seem like it's doing any of the taxpayers a service. If we got to the point, and we were expecting pretty certainly that some of the industrial building that we're hoping to see would increase our power needs, then I'd be interested to explore that. But I guess my strong preference would be to explore building something first, because I think there's more options there for us to see more potential long-term savings. And then, yeah, and, unfortunately, all of the costs of our current energy setup, the externalized costs are very hard to see, so,
I think I would, with the purchase power agreement, there's as many opportunities to customize it to fit our needs as if we owned as well. I don't think we give that up by doing a purchase power agreement. I think we gain a little bit with the purchase power agreement in the fact that we no longer we don't have to build and maintain it. We don't have to worry about the construction costs and the
Sure.
retirement costs and stuff like that. But we also kind of give up control of it also, so there's kind of
I would assume perhaps this is a
Trade-off.
mistaken assumption that, the maintenance costs are gonna be, for whoever we're buying it from, they're gonna try to make sure that they're covering those costs, right?
Right, they're
So
gonna
that's-
cover their bases. They're gonna look
Right.
at that and say, okay,
Right.
City of Geneva, you want this, here's what it's gonna cost over the lifetime
Right.
of the plant. We're gonna divide that and so on and so forth, and here's your rate.
So absolutely, we don't have to
Right.
deal with the actual person power of maintenance or replacing things or dismantling, if it were to come to that. But,
A good parallel to that right now is what we have with Settlers Hill. Settlers Hill is owned by Waste Management, WMRE, Bioenergy Partners, actually. All we do is buy the energy off of it. They do all the maintenance. So, that would almost be the ideal type situation. But we get a really good deal right now because they're not interested in making a lot of money off the energy. They make their revenue stream is selling the renewable energy credits, actually, off that. So they make more money doing that than they do selling us energy.
and would we be eligible for, I'm sorry, it was a lot of information, I'm sure you covered this, but I can't recall. If we built something, we would then have renewable energy credits we
We
could
could-
sell?
We could, yeah.
Has-
If we
is
didn't
that-
want to use it to offset our energy,
Okay.
we could
Right,
certainly
okay,
sell
yep,
it.
no, that's where, right, it gets, my brain still has to sort
Right.
some of that out, okay. Okay, and all right, well, so like I said, I feel like my inclination, and I will continue thinking about it since it seems like you see more benefits to a purchase power agreement, but, yeah, all right, I'll keep mulling that over, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Alderperson Reineke, then Alderperson Mayor.
Yeah, just following up on what you were saying, what are your projections as to the growth of energy use here in Geneva over, say, the next 20 years?
Boy, that's the question. To be honest with you, our energy usage has gone down since about 2016, 2017 was our peak. It looks like if the trend continues, what we've been seeing in about the past 12 months or so, we're starting to turn the corner, it's starting to go back up. A lot of the reduction we saw previously was energy efficiency, people putting in newer appliances, newer air conditioners, newer lighting, All of our industrial customers cut over to LED lighting. They put in variable frequency drives, anything to reduce their energy usage. I don't know if there's a lot of gains to be had in that aspect right now. So as we add load, as these buildings get built and people move into them, businesses move into them, start using energy, we should see our energy go up. There's all sorts of predictions out there that our energy usage in 20 years is going to triple because of electrification and vehicle electrification and so on and so forth. A lot of that is really foggy crystal ball stuff right now. I'm hopeful it's going to go up and we're going to start selling more electricity. I just don't know by how much.
You know, Alderperson Reineke, if you want to geek out with me, there's a website, IEA, the International Energy Association. It is fascinating. In fact, I cite Aaron Holton quite a bit on that. Alderperson Mayor, Alderperson Maliki.
Okay, so first of all, I want to echo what Alderperson Reineke said and ask that you do provide some information about life cycle costs
Okay.
on the panels and maintenance costs. I have a suspicion that for us as an investment, ground mount are probably better than roof mount from a serviceable, from a renovating standpoint, because you'll have the structure in place and it's serviceable from the ground to replace rather than on a roof.
Sure.
Maybe I'm not correct about that, but
I-
it would be interesting to
Yeah,
hear.
you're beyond my expertise there as well, so.
Okay. So I guess roof-mounted versus field-mounted, if there's a difference that's appreciable between the two service costs. And then I wonder, because from our maintenance side, when a solar panel goes down, there's no emergency. Is that something that's beneficial for your department to have non-urgent work for people to do during filler times?
Right now, we don't have a lot of filler time.
Yeah. Fair, fair.
We would treat it with, it wouldn't be an emergency, but it would be urgent. If we had an inverter go out or a string of panels fail, we would want to get somebody out there relatively quickly.
Okay.
It's not going to be a call-out type situation.
Right,
but
it's
it'll
not gonna
be
be an
during
overtime
It'll be during the
situation.
normal
Right.
work scheduling process.
Okay. And then this next one is a little bit, maybe next step. We have all these industrial buildings that are going to be built. Is there a way that we can find a way to incentivize them to overbuild their capacity of solar to feed back onto the grid? And would there ever be a time when that would shift to be beneficial?
I would say, I don't have a good argument for or against that. I haven't really thought about that. We are in discussions with some of our larger industrial customers who do want to put large solar arrays on their roofs. We would be buying the excess energy off of them as well. But again, the energy flows to the customer first, then comes to us, if there's anything left over. Typically on a large industrial, the biggest one we have right now is out of Continental Envelope. That's the 750 kW system. And the only time it gets pushed back is on Saturday and Sunday when they're closed down. Other than that, they're still a net user of, right. So you take a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day operation, and we likely wouldn't ever see any energy
Any
received
feedback
back to
onto-
us.
Okay. So I guess I'm going to go back to my original statement, which is that I think that taking a step forward will give us all a lot more intelligence about how this plays out and if it's good to keep going or if we should pump the brakes a little bit.
Okay.
So I'm eager to see what GGF, what that
What that would look
would
like.
look like.
Alderperson Maliki. Then Bowery.
With the state's, clamoring for power generation, and we have or data centers going all over the place, so I know that's a big need, is just energy generation. Do you think it's prudent to possibly look at 2 sites, GGF, and maybe like city-owned, and then possibly doing like a purchase agreement for wastewater, just to bring in, you know, more generation by the time things are running and online? It's just an idea, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to take direction. If you want me to look at both of those sites, I can look at both of those sites.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know how things work if we end up having excess capacity in the next, 2-3 years. If, I don't know, as a city, are we able to like contract out like a actual, for an actual corporation or something? So say something goes up in DeKalb and are looking to buy power from somebody.
No, we can't do that.
No.
We can't sell outside the corporate city limits. So we're
Okay.
confined, our service territory is the border of Geneva.
Is
We
here,
can't
unless it
sell.
was like a purchase agreement or something where somebody was put
Even
panels
then,
on our
even
property.
then, we can't, it has to be physically, the facility and basically the meter has to be physically located within the city of Geneva.
Gotcha. Is that state statute or?
That is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alderperson Bowering.
For next time, or maybe you know the answer now, but it's fine if we come back to this. How did we arrive at the 26 megawatt hour battery? Is there a smaller battery that would be useful?
I would have
or-
to ask that question.
Okay.
That number, excuse me, that number came from Interface.
Okay,
To be honest with you, I didn't, they just threw that, they said, this is what we could put at these sites altogether. So
okay.
I'll
I
have to
guess
ask them.
I'd be curious to know if there was like a smaller battery at a smaller price tag that might potentially, I guess this is coming back to my first question, that might pair well
Right.
with something, for example, at GGF, that would help us kind of mimic what GGF does with gas, with solar, so that we could, really try to bring our capacity
Right.
costs down.
I don't know if there is, at the sizes that we're talking about, I don't know if there's any advantages of scale there.
Okay,
If we put in a, excuse me, if we put in a 5 megawatt hour battery at GGF, I don't know if there's a cost savings or a cost penalty, just because
Sure.
the sizes are about comparable. It's not like we're putting in 100 or 1,000 megawatt hour batteries, where you get that economy of scale.
right.
I think it's all.
No,
it's
I
all
just,
pretty
sorry, I
much the
have all these things on different pages.
Sure.
But then, yeah, okay. No, that makes sense. I was trying, 1.13 megawatt. Okay, yeah, I don't know. I'm not good enough at translating how long it would take to fill up a 26 megawatt hour battery. If we're generating at peak sun, 217,000 kilowatt hours.
You're in the weeds.
Yeah, anyway, maybe someone else can do that real quick, but not me. Anyway, so I mean, I guess, yeah, I'd be curious, for kind of that level of analysis to get it working,
Okay, we can look at that.
sort of like GGF. Cool, awesome, thank you.
Anyone
And
else?
it's entirely possible the Interface already has that worked out. I just need to ask for it, so.
Anyone else? You're clear on direction and support and encouragement?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Item B, consider draft resolution authorizing the execution of a labor contract with Utility Dynamics Corporation for the fiscal year '26 underground replacement program in the amount of $714,975.10, with allowance for the city administrator to approve change orders not to exceed 10% of the contract for a not to exceed total of $786,472.61. Bowering makes the motion, Mayor makes the second. Stephanie, anything else you want to add to this?
It's pretty self-explanatory, but just in your packet, there was a little memo outlining it, talking about the areas that we're looking at replacing underground infrastructure. So this is the labor portion, and it would be for the Pine Brook Meadow subdivision, 1950 and 2000 Batavia Avenue. James Street west of 9th Street, and 4th and State Street. And again, Utility Dynamics was evaluated to be the low bid after we put out for bid back in April. So, any questions? Superintendent Holton is still with us to answer those.
Any questions for the superintendent and/or city administrator? Alderperson
Just,
Kilburg?
I see that we're moving the Caneville Road project into next year. And I see that the winning bid was over what we had budgeted. How much over was that roughly?
With removing the 1770 Caneville? Or-
Right. I mean, well, the
It was,
the
it
bid
was,
or the specs were for all 5 projects.
right.
What was our, I guess my question is what was our budgeted amount?
Budget's $1
What
million.
did we think it was going to be?
We budgeted $1 million. Every year, we budget $1 million for underground replacement, so that's what we had budgeted for. So right now, we're 49,000 over budget.
Okay,
And before, I think it was another, I would have to go back and look actually at the bid opening and what it was, but it was substantially more than that.
okay.
Enough that we wanted to just push that off till.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. The voice vote is sufficient. All in favor of item B, 3B, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Fantastic.
All right,
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you. Our final item this evening, to consider draft resolution authorizing the development economic incentive agreement with 318 Lofts LLC for 318 Anderson Boulevard. Bowering makes the motion, Paschke makes the second. Want me to just defer to our friend Kathleen, or do you want?
Yeah, just please do.
Director of Economic Development, Kathleen Timoshenko, is with us this evening to present us information tonight regarding this opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
Thank you. So tonight, we're really excited to present this public-private partnership opportunity for the existing building at 318 Anderson. The property is under contract and has an opportunity for a new life with a vibrant commercial user on the ground floor, new residential apartments on the second and the third floor. The contract purchaser and developer is Jim Russell of Kipling Group, who has formed the 318 Lofts LLC. There's a pending 10-year lease to secure the commercial tenancy of Village Peddler, a bike cafe currently operating in South Elgin and owned by Jimmy Russell. Both Mr. Russells are here this evening. Our presentation will start with me giving you a project overview and some background information, and then conclude with the opportunity to ask any questions of me or Mr. Russell. So just to orient you, the subject site is on the northwest corner of Anderson and Ford. It's about an 18,200 square foot site, which is under half an acre. The zoning is the DRSCM zoning district, which stands for residentially scaled commercial mixed use. The site is part of a small neighborhood commercial area that includes Altiro Restaurant and the World Martial Arts Academy to the south, and a dentist office and a hair salon to the north. Geneva High School is behind the property at the rear. So records indicate that the Sanitary Drinking Cup Company occupied the building before and during 1912. They made the Life Cup, which was a paper drinking cup that was part of a nationwide effort to prevent the spread of tuberculosis and try to avoid germs with more sanitary approaches to medical operations. They didn't last too long, though. The building was then home to the Illinois Candle Company in the 1930s. And then fast forwarding way to the present of past, we had a partial occupancy there of Tech Pro, the owner purchased the building in 2001. It underwent a substantial rehabilitation to house that company. But the property never was fully occupied. It was always kind of sort of occupied, substantially underutilized, really, for the size of the building. And Tech Pro moved to Gary Lane when the owner of the company purchased a larger industrial facility and moved Tech Pro there. So to the best of our knowledge, this property has been substantially underutilized in excess of 10 years. So now I'm going to try to show you some slides and some photos about the existing conditions, and they're really reflective of the underutilization and the vacancy that has existed at the property. We're going to try to give you a 360 view today. The first photo shows the front elevation from the north corner of the site, and the second shows a view of the north elevation and the lean-to structure. The next three photos show the rear view from the back of the lean structure and the garage structure, and then the rear view from the Geneva school parking lot, which is something that people see every day in and out of the school. These are some of the interior existing conditions. We can see the two photos of the basement and the first floor partial area, and then the last photo is the third floor. So you can see that it's just kind of there, the property, not really activated at all. In the next few slides, we're going to show you the vision for the property. The Plata survey is there to show you the layout today, how the lean-to building and the building, the accessory building exists on the site. And then the new proposed site plan shows how those structures are going to be eliminated. And then there's going to be, in addition, about 2,500 square feet of enclosed and patio space at the ground level in support of the tenant's operations. Other planned upgrades include the environmental remediation, exterior building reinforcement and repair, new storefront and window replacement, first floor commercial build-out, including a commercial kitchen and ADA bathrooms, stairs and emergency access improvements, and then residential units on the second and the third floor. So now we're going to look at some elevations, proposed elevations for the property. These kind of speak for themselves, so just kind of rush through them for you. Okay, so there's been a lot of retrofitting challenges that we've, kind of documented throughout the years, but also that we revisited recently as we tried to get this project energized. This project was first discussed in November, and it had a lot of challenges, and it went away. And everybody worked really hard to try to bring it back because it is such a good use for the site. So I have hurdles listed, but I really just want to talk about the two top ones because those were the ones that were encountered regularly throughout discussion. So of course you have the environmental remediation. And the contract purchaser has undergone the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 studies. There's a formulation for an estimate of work needed to try to get to the NFR. That's the no further remediation letter that you would get from the IEPA, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. And this work is estimated at about $60,000, and it's the work that we based our incentive from. Mandatory work includes additional drilling for core sampling, testing, and report generation. And then there's a fee from the IEPA for the review of the report and findings. There's possible physical remediation would be removing contaminated soil and replacing it with new soil, installing a vapor barrier and venting under the first floor, and completely replacing the parking lot asphalt. So if all the physical remediation mentioned is not included in that 60,000, if that additional work was needed, the developer is going to be taking that on separately. So it's a risk to, move forward with this project that's being recognized here. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the first floor challenge. And the first floor is challenged because of the way it's built. It's partially underground, so it's kind of a basement. The zoning ordinance requires commercial on that ground level, and then you could do residential above. And the challenge isn't so much from the zoning ordinance, because people could petition for a change of zoning. The challenge is more about the physical makeup. It doesn't lend itself to a storefront very easily. And it doesn't also lend itself to residential. It's just kind of a challenging setup that isn't really marketable for either use. So that's been the real challenge with this property. The proposed project finally kind of solves that dilemma, because you're bringing forward a very desirable end tenant and who can use that space effectively, can use the entire first floor, and you have a developer who has expertise in residential that's desirous of doing the other 2 floors. So this project is kind of bringing all that together for the city finally, and the site. So the proposed budget, due to all the challenges, is in excess of $2.3 million as shown here, and it's also detailed in the draft incentive agreement that you have provided to you. And our contract purchaser is seeking assistance with environmental remediation and electric infrastructure. That was one of the challenges too, is that the electric hasn't been updated in a very long time, and it's not the right services coming in to be conducive to the end use. So the proposed project meets the city's planning goals and objectives embodied in the Downtown Station Master Plan, including assisting with preservation of downtown's authentic character and strengthening the role downtown has as a central business district. The project also coincides with our city's purposeful growth and economic vitality goals as articulated in our Geneva 2030 strategic plan. Goals include utilizing programs and policies to attract new investment, facilitate reinvestment that increases and diversifies the tax base, and leveraging economic development programs to attract investment. So we do have a recommendation before you for assistance, and this includes a few different things. We're recommending a historic preservation adaptive reuse grant for $15,000 of the environmental remediation. We are recommending completion of a portion of the electric upgrades at a cost of $32,900. It should be noted, though, that about 50% of the electric costs are to replace an existing pole. And the pole replacement is warranted with or without this project and would eventually be scheduled. But given the redevelopment opportunity, work would need to be moved up because of the electric that would be needed. So we have put that into this incentive so that there's a guarantee to the developer that it will be completed. And then we have a sales tax rebate at the maximum time period for 10 years. The money from the bike shop and the coffee shop would go toward paying this at 90% of the 1% for environmental remediation and electric costs. It is a larger share of the sales tax, but it's necessary. The business is, mainly a service business. So to get to the funds that are needed, this is how we worked it out. And, you know, if the business does succeed in having additional sales than are projected, the sales tax rebate gets by faster, and I personally think it probably will, given the location and the business that'll probably be generated, but, you know, we'll see. I'm sorry, the other thing is, we like to look at the development shares to make sure that we understand the private sector to the public sector, and we are at a pretty high developer contribution compared to the municipal public, 95 to 5. There's several justifications for this assistance, which I think that we covered a little bit, but just to summarize, we have a lot of infrastructure costs, including electric, that are impediment to private investment, including environmental costs. It's a difficult space to fill. It was originally constructed for industrial a long, long time ago. And there's a lot of challenges with trying to make it feasible and marketable in today's end users, for today's end users. We have a retailer who is desirous of being here and has a successful record and brand. We have a business and ownership relationship between the developer and the end user, which will ensure future maintenance and attention and will spur additional investment in years to come. The majority of the funds that we're recommending be devoted to the project will be generated by the business there. And the project meets our goals and objectives. So, in conclusion, we are asking you to consider approval for the economic incentive agreement that we've presented this evening and advance that to City Council for final approval. If you have any questions, happy to answer them, as is Mr. Russell.
The floor is open for questions for our Economic Development Director, Alderperson Malicki, Alderperson Bowring.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I don't have any questions per se, but just like looking over everything here, I just feel that this idea checks a lot of boxes that I like to look for. I mean, with our strong belief with historic preservation in Geneva, giving life to a building from 1905, I think is wonderful. Bringing in a little bit of density with apartments up in the top 2 floors, I think that's a good thing for the, and then having the shop at the coffee shop for the neighborhood there. I think it's going to be a nice addition for the neighborhood. I think you'll probably meet that sales tax rebate within a year with all the high school kids coming in to buy coffee. So I just wanted to say I'm all for it, so thank you.
Alderperson Bowring.
I also don't have any questions at this time. I'm just very excited. I live a few blocks from here. The entire time
We've heard that a lot.
The entire time I've lived here, that building has been in a significantly underused and neglected state. So I am thrilled, and we unfortunately lost a bike shop that was in the neighborhood recently. So I'd love to see that go in, and this seems like a fantastic idea. And really kudos to you for having the vision to come in and put this old, beautiful building to a really vibrant new use. So I'm very supportive of this project, and I wanted to thank all of the people that have been working on this so hard. Kathleen, thank you for the presentation, but yeah, I'm excited, hopefully, to see this go forward. Thank you.
Alderperson Reineke, then Alderperson Kilberg.
Yeah, I would agree. This is a lovely project. I have to say, my wife and I were talking about this before. Having a coffee shop there is going to be great. And so I think this is going to be a winner as a project. If you would, could you take just a moment to unpack your time frame for completing your construction projects, and where do you see this coming online?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're scheduled to close pretty quickly based on what happens here, quite frankly. Our strategy would be to award the remediation immediately. So that's primarily drilling
taking more core samples, and then it's all paperwork. You know, paperwork with our environmental consulting firm, and then a fee from the Illinois EPA. The feedback that I'm getting is we should be able to get the NFR letter. However, it's going to take money and it's going to take time. We are going to begin the project. We're prepared to complete the project with cash. And then hopefully down the road, we'll get the NFR letter and we can refinance it. So there will not be a holdup based on waiting for the NFR letter before we start and get bank financing, which I think is big. Our next step would be to have our architect immediately put together a demolition plan and try to get a demo permit in there. In the back corner, there's some real strange things going on with some floors that have happened over the last 120 years. I know there's different levels and things like that. So we're going to demo that and then get the architect in there with a clean slate. The second and third floor apartments are easy. Everybody that has looked at this project falls in love with the second and third floors. The challenge is the first floor, and really the only reason we're interested and the reason that it works for us is because of Jimmy and his business. It's going to be a pretty cool bike shop. And then the addition that we want to put out on the side will be the coffee shop, bagel shop. But the dining area will be integrated with the bike displays. So we think it's going to be a real fun place. We hope that we can get this, done in a year. His lease is up at his current building next summer, so we want to move as fast as possible. Maybe you guys can, once we get our plans in, we can get a permit real quick. If you can help us there, that'll help us get it done faster.
That's the firm. Alderperson Reineke still has the floor. Alderperson Paskey, then Kilburg.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I think the incentives being recommended are reasonable. I appreciate how well this ties into our stated goals for the city. It does make me sad that I moved away from this neighborhood a couple years ago. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad that you may not open for a year, so my last kid will be graduated and not all of my money will be going there immediately. I think this looks like a fantastic project. Having lived within sight of that building for years, I couldn't be happier to see something like this go in there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Alderperson Kilburg, then Mayor.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. The environmental remediation, tell me a little bit about what we're looking for there. What are you anticipating, or what's the issue that's lingering there that's requiring this?
So there's 5 recs from the Phase 2 study. 2 of them were on site. One was sometime in the 1940s or something like that. There was a dry cleaner in there. And then at some point in time, there was a machine shop. Okay. So there was some, during the Phase 2, there were some remnants of chemicals. I don't remember these names and things like that.
So we're not dealing with a gas tank or buried tank or
No,
anything?
so actually what's interesting is the 3 surrounding properties, including the Geneva bus station. So the property to the north, which is the dentist,
Yeah.
they had an underground tank, and it's registered with the Illinois EPA, and it leaked. The bus station had a underground tank that was removed, and it leaked. And the building that connects to this building, it's contiguous to this building, to the south, had a dry cleaner.
Okay.
Okay, so our consultant, I've actually had 2 consultants look at it so far to get quotes. They think it's pretty contained and, not going anywhere. It's not going deeper, not in the water supply and things like that. So it's going to be more of a seal off the project and file a ton of paperwork that's very expensive, is what we think it's going to be.
Do we know that those other buried tanks to the north, that they were remediated?
They were removed, yeah.
They were removed.
But-
Okay, so
but
there's no
not
leaching
remediated.
issues into
They-
your property?
They elected not to remediate,
Okay,
yeah,
they were removed.
but they were removed.
Okay. And then my last question was parking. And I see what, we have 14 stalls here, parking stalls? Is that going to be sufficient? And what we're talking about, what, 4 apartments or 4?
We're trying to get 5.
Five?
It's zoned for up to 6. We think we can get 5, 2-bedroom, 2-bath,
Okay,
very nice apartments. I think they're gonna turn out beautiful with a loft-like feel, very high ceilings. I think that, exposed wood, exposed brick, I think they're gonna be beautiful.
okay. The only reason I ask that is with the school situation there, parking is in high demand there. And do we have sufficient parking there for what we're anticipating?
I can answer.
Yeah. I mean, am I right at 14 stalls?
Well, it'd be private parking too.
Pardon me?
Wouldn't be allowable for students to park.
Well, I understand
Yeah,
that, but I'm just saying though that when they have visitors and you've got 5 apartments and you have an activity during the school day or whatever, people are going to need to try to find some place to park. And,
And Anderson Boulevard is on-street parking as well.
What are you looking at on the parking that you got?
well, I'm looking at this.
Yeah,
I've got about 10 in front and on 4 on the north side and
I think we
facing,
updated that.
facing south
Right.
into the,
So there's been.
Coffee shop?
There's been conversations going on with Community Development Director DeGroot, and he's.
Just one second.
I'm sorry.
We're getting into the details of the building project before we're getting into the incentives associated with the project. Just FYI, we're not here for zoning and.
No,
and
I'm not.
parking. Okay, it's not relevant, unfortunately, to the topic before this tribunal. And we're not doing a parking assessment now.
no, well, I'm just asking if, what would we anticipate though would be the parking requirements for this type of a property?
We're still calculating that, however, we
Okay.
think we're higher than the number you have. We also have 2 garages in the back.
Okay.
I think we're a lot closer, I think we're very close.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's something that's.
And now we're looking at, even in terms of putting things on 45-degree angle, getting access rights from a neighboring property, an access right agreement, so that we can create a one-way and add additional parking. I think we're gonna get there.
The only reason I ask is the city's committing resources here, and the thing is that if the parking is an issue, the feasibility of the parking at some point in time is going to have to be addressed.
Right.
So, I don't, if it's inappropriate to ask that question now, I understand that, I'm just posing it because
Fair question.
it's something that's going to need to be addressed at some point in time, and you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I know
Okay.
We're actually have already begun the process to address it. And I think I think there's a path to get there.
And would you also agree that once we solve the parking problem, that's our biggest concern? Because hopefully, there is a parking issue. Hopefully, people are so frequently coming to your location for bike repairs, bagels, and coffee, and what have you.
Well,
that the
to
lot
be
is full,
honest
so-
with you, we hope they're riding their bikes.
Well, of course, but if you've seen my bike, that ain't the case, so.
only-
Oops, excuse me.
The only challenge is that you've got students that'll come in before class, and they'll buy a cup of coffee. And the thing is their car's there, and they may be there for 2 hours until their class at 10 o'clock. I'm just saying that it does present some challenges just because of where you're situated.
There's no
And
question.
all you need to do is you need to ask the surrounding neighborhood if there have been issues as it relates to parking, and there have been a lot of issues relating to parking within 3 or 4 blocks of the high school, so. But I'm excited about the project. I want to wish you the best of luck,
Thank you.
and hopefully you can expedite it, and you can be operational in 18 months.
Yeah, well, hopefully less. No, we're hoping less.
Alderperson Mayor.
That kept confusing me, so, not the mayor, the
It's an E-
alderperson
It's an E,
mayor.
not an O, but Alderperson Mayor's
Okay,
father also
now
served in the
I'm
city
slow,
council.
I'm slow.
When the building was the health cup thing, I think, right?
The building was what?
Nothing. Senator.
Yes. So I'm thrilled with this. I think that Kathleen, you did a great job putting together the materials and couldn't be happier to see this kind of underutilized site be used. One thing I was wondering about, in other economic incentive agreements, we've incentivized fire sprinkler systems. Will this building have fire sprinkler systems?
So I think it'll have to, yeah, we're planning
In
on
the
it. It's in our
apartments as
budget.
well?
Pardon me?
In the apartments as well?
Yeah, we're budgeted to put
Okay.
those in. We just assumed that was gonna be the case.
Alderperson Kilmer is absolutely right, that is a zoning issue, but it is applicable to our code. I can guarantee you Antonori is not gonna let that pass. So
But we also have offered incentives for it in the past, so that's why
there's
I'm
no
bringing it
incentive
up
for that
here.
particular, correct,
Okay.
Kathleen?
So,
No.
all right, thank you. That's, you've answered my question. I'm glad that it's gonna have fire sprinklers.
Anyone else on the dais? Alderperson Palmquist.
Just very quickly, want to provide my endorsement and appreciate, I know that there's a lot of fits and starts, so to get to this point where we're near the finish line took a lot of work, so I just want to recognize that.
I would like to add one thing. Oh, go
Alderperson
ahead.
Furnish?
Just one question. Getting back to these tanks, did the school district ever do any core samples, after they took the tanks out, or there was no remediation, or just dropped
I
after
don't,
that?
it's, it's
I
in
mean, is there any
it's in the
public-
phase 2 report, but it is,
Okay,
yeah, my ADD kicks in and I can't read.
can't answer that.
this.
And then the dry cleaning chemicals, you've probably done other projects. Is that a bad one too, or?
That is a bad one.
Yeah, the dry clean is a bad one. They don't think
Okay.
it's deep. We have to remove the parking lot anyway, so in the event, they think in the worst-case scenario, we dig out a 10 by 10 by 10 area deep and
So you could overcome
Fill it.
all this stuff?
it is, well, there's no floor in the basement. I don't know what happened there. So I don't know if something already started. There's a lot of things that have started and stopped with this
Thank you.
project, yeah.
Anyone else?
I would like to say one thing.
Please
So this project, we got under contract in November, and we had a 120-day due diligence period, because why we build apartment complexes and single-family homes, and we develop residential subdivisions, some of them quite large, 100 acres, 300. I've never really dealt with a building like this. So we had a long due diligence period, and we got our structural engineers in there, architects, and everything, and then we, of course, did the environmental, phase 1, things came up, and then a phase 2, and I met with the seller, and there was no acceptance of our offer we thought that we needed to get some help on that from the seller. And this deal went dead. It was dead Friday night, about 3 weeks ago, Friday night, 5 o'clock, we gave him his offer and it was dead. And then the next Tuesday, I was in the gym and Kathleen called me and said, "Where's the deal?" And I said, "It's dead. It's going nowhere." This is before I even knew about the 75 grand on the power. We just couldn't make sense of this deal. And she said, "Well, I think we can help you. I think we can help bridge that gap if you can get it back under contract. And we'll see if we can get it in front of the committee and see if we can pull this deal together." So I wanted to point that out, what she did, because, she really saved the deal. And also, I want to thank the committee for getting us in here so fast, because we don't have a lot of time on the contract. So thank you very much.
Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate it.
We have a motion by Bowering, a second by Paschke on item 3C. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. This will advance to the city council meeting on Monday, May the 19th. It will be formally considered then.
Thank you.
Thank you both. If your bikes are locked up, please be careful riding home. Public comment. Anyone joining us this evening wishes to address the council? Share with us any thoughts on your mind, any questions you might have. Your turn to speak, our turn to listen. Bill? Oh, quiet. Look at that. New business from the dais. Alderperson Kilburg.
Just a couple of things. I want to thank our local postal service. Over the weekend, many of you probably contributed to their collection. They had a record response from the community with over 14,000 pounds of food that was donated across the city of Geneva. That's double of what they've collected previously. So at a time of need and with the challenges Northern Illinois Food Bank is facing, this is excellent. The other point I wanted to bring up was, do we have an idea when the grocery tax will be coming before the council as an issue? I believe we need to address that by October of this
Correct.
year.
That's correct.
And we're talking about, what, $557,000?
So I have to recheck the numbers because I don't know if the numbers we were given was just for fiscal year '26 because it goes away in January, or if that was for a full fiscal year.
Okay,
So I would guess probably somewhere between 500 and 750,000.
right, so it's pretty significant and something that we need to be thinking about, and you anticipate we're going to have that on the agenda here this summer sometime?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other point, I don't know if anyone else took the opportunity to listen in or participate in the Aurora Convention Bureau and Tourism and Convention Bureau strategic planning discussion last week. It was interesting and informative, and there will be other opportunities, I believe, as they continue with this consulting group to provide input and learn more about what services they provide. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session for the purposes of, time out, excuse me, guys, I have closed session on the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, and/or dismissal of specific employees of the public body consistent with Illinois compiled statutes 120-2, the setting of a price of sale for lease of property owned by the public body, and pending litigation. Is there a motion? Motion by Marks? Seconded by Palmquist. Roll call vote is appropriate.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Palmquist?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Reinicke?
Aye.
Bowering?
Aye.
Furnish?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Malicki?
Aye.
Anyone need a break?
We just need to get a few things.
Turn the microphones off. Happy to entertain a motion to return to open session. Motion by Marks, seconded by Bowering. A roll call vote is necessary to return this body to open session. In just a moment, we'll take the roll from our city administrator, Ms. Dawkins. Motion was Marks, seconded Bowering.
So Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Palmquist?
Aye.
Paschke?
Aye.
Reinicke?
Aye.
Bowering?
Aye.
Furnish?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Malicki?
Aye.
We're back in open session as the city council. If there's no additional new business to share, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Paschke. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Microphones are off.